All right, hello everybody. I'm DonTheCrown, and that was my Eagle Quill Volley Harmony build. Kind of just going through the pit here. This is about tier 50, which is not that bad through the up, going up the pit. And my gear for this character is not really all that great just yet, mostly because there was kind of a bug where we weren't able to actually get a lot of easy upgrades because iron chunks and rawhide, the cost for doing pretty much anything on an ancestral piece of gear was way, way, way too high. And so you could spend hours and hours just farming these two materials to be able to just masterwork one piece of gear. So you notice that almost none of my gear is masterworked, and even some of it doesn't even have tempers right now because things are just that tight right now. But I kind of just want to talk through the build real quick, but I want to show a little bit of gameplay right off the bat. So we are using Quill Volley, which is the core skill for Eagle here. This is just really insane. It throws out 8 feathers, and each one does more damage for to each enemy per hit. And so the more enemies you hit, just kind of the more damage you do. It's pretty silly. And we're using the Rod of Kapaleke, which has a ton of text on it. But basically what it does is it makes it so your core skills are additionally basic skills. They're 100% free to cast, but they do less damage based on their vigor cost. However, when the skill is cast at maximum vigor, it makes it so it consumes all of the vigor, it returns the full damage, casts at its largest size, and become guaranteed crits, and it does up to 3% increased critical strike damage for each point of vigor spent this way. So right now I have a grand total of 301 vigor, so that is quite a big plus if you can get that to proc off all the time. And that's pretty much the entire plan of this build, is to spam cooldowns and get a ton of vigor rolling all of the time, and it's relatively easy to do. So one of the big things we're using here is we're using Ring of the Midnight Sun. So when you critically strike, you regain 50% of the vigor you've spent recently in the last 2 seconds. Now, when I first saw this, I thought this was going to be absolutely OP broken, because it's just really, really easy to crit twice and recover all of your vigor. However, whenever you consume vigor, you'll get a little buff here that will have the amount of vigor you spent, so 301, and this will get consumed when you crit next, or even when your mercenary companion crits, and so you can't just get all your vigor back. So we need to find some other ways to get vigor. Now, one of the things that we're using in this particular build is sapping. So this makes it so that we cast 3 Gorilla, Jaguar, Eagle, Centipede skills with the same spirit in a row, you restore 15% of your vigor and deal increased damage. And so we're pretty much always casting Quill Volley all of the time, and this helps give us quite a bit of vigor. Now, since we have resource generation, both from intelligence and from some other sources, we do get a little bit more than 15%. So between Midnight Sun and a few casts, it's pretty good. The staff itself gives you velocity. The helmet also gives you velocity. So if you have done damage recently, so I have 0 ranks in this. If I've done damage recently and I'm moving, I get 6 vigor per second, which is not really a ton. I really wish this was vigorous instead. And I've kind of considered putting vigorous maybe on our amulet here in terms of a rank. Right now, this thing is ancestral, so I can't really put anything on here. So I think that's probably what I'm going to do here is probably going to do armor, and we'll do vigorous to generate more resources. But the other ring we're using is pretty much really suspect, but it has one really good stat on it. So Midday Hunt has mostly stuff that we don't care about. Life on kill is not very good. Attack speed is good. Movement speed on killing an enemy is kind of okay. Nourishment does nothing for us because it increases our poisoning damage. But it's the first part of this that is really popping off. Your maximum vigor is increased by 50%, and killing an enemy grants you 6 up to 7 vigor. And when you have ferocity, your poisoning effects deal their damage across 33% of the normal duration. Does nothing for us, we're not poisoning. But this takes our vigor right now from 301 from 200. So this is basically giving me 100 extra vigor at this point, and that would be 300% multiplier here with the Kapaleke, as long as I'm casting at the max. Now, most of my damage is when we're casting at the max, so we're going to focus on bumping that up as much as possible. So even though this ring is pretty suspect, is going to be good for us to use because of the massive bonus that it provides in terms of vigor. Midnight Sun does have some good stuff like Mirage, gives us some crit chance, cooldown reduction. We don't really necessarily care too much about crit chance. We do have a couple of different spots to get crit chance in the build, but I don't really think that it's really all that important because Kapaleke itself will force a critical strike. So even on our gloves here, like getting critical strike chance or getting critical strike damage, probably not as important as getting things like attack speed and armor. They might be wondering why armor. Well, this really ridiculous aspect is why. So unyielding hits makes it so that casting a gorilla skill increases your weapon damage by 25% of your armor for 3 seconds. And I really haven't found the cap for this yet. Granted, my armor is not really all that high yet. But to kind of show you what's going on, first off, everything is a gorilla skill because of my spirit hall. We'll go back to this in a little bit. But if we look at the damage here, we can see that Withering Fist here was going to do 5% of my weapon damage at 313. If I cast it here, I get the buff, and now it is at 1352. So this one aspect is giving me quite a bit of damage there. And I believe we're also getting skill ranks as well. So let me just knock that off. So it goes up to actually 867. Oh, nope, 1127. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell exactly what's going on here. Yeah, 1127 from 300. So it's almost a 4 times multiplier. I do think that this is maybe a little bit busted and it's probably going to be the key thing in every single build. And it probably should be on my amulet, except for I really can't afford to imprint a different aspect on these 2 spots right now. So it kind of is what it is. The other aspect that we're using offensively is rebounding. This makes it so our quill volley's feathers explode at their apex and return to where they're cast, both dealing percentage of their damage. So there's a little bit of a damage cut, but it does cause it so that your feathers do hit twice. And then remember that they do additional damage per hit. I'm pretty sure they're doing more damage when they're coming back in, which is pretty darn nice. It also makes it so that they explode at distance. Now I'm using the option that makes it so that we get more feathers and get more damage per hit. You could also use this other one here that does give you a little bit of critical strike chance, and it allows you to kind of like target where the feathers are going. Now, one of the problems with this is that if you are trying to kind of triple overlap, hit with the explosion at the end, hit with the feathers going at, and hitting with the feathers coming in, you pretty much can only make this guaranteed happen when there, is somebody else tanking a boss for you. Because this is about as far away as you need to be to make that happen, which I don't really think is going to be a reasonable situation for most people, which is why I just go with the other one, get the explosions and stuff. It's pretty solid for clearing. Now the other gear real quick, Harmony. This makes it so that all of our skills are not just our primary spirit hall, but also our secondary one. So we are using Gorilla and Jaguar. Gorilla is pretty nice because it gives us some defenses. If we lose all our life, we're going to die. So this is pretty nice. We don't really care about the thorns here. We don't really care about the, we care about the barrier, but it's pretty nice. And also makes it so that everything we do procs that unyielding hits. This is only a 3-second buff. So if you don't have this as one of your spirit halls, it's going to be kind of a pain in the butt to keep this up. Our other option here is Jaguar. So our maximum ferocity is increased by 1, and 1 stack of ferocity whenever we kill an enemy or damage a boss. You could potentially swap the 2 of these. So you make it Jaguar main and then Gorilla secondary, which could potentially be okay. But this does unlock some interesting things in our skill tree here. So we could realistically go and take points here into Resilient, which would give us more life just for casting basically any skill. We can even put 1 point into Dominant to make it so we do increased damage to knock down enemies, have a chance to execute non-bosses. But right now, I just don't really feel like I have enough points to make that happen. But most importantly is going over here to Potent and Furnace. So hitting enemies with Jaguar skills increases the damage they take from you by 0.3 up to 30%, which means you need to hit 100 times to cap this out. However, with shooting out 8 feathers that then come back it's pretty easy to stack that up very quickly against bosses. And then Furnace makes it so that we have increased critical strike damage per stack of ferocity. Now, our alt is going to give us a total of 9 stacks of ferocity here. So that is quite a bit of damage, almost like, I don't even know what the math of that is. It's like 13% multiplier here for 3 ranks. I think that that's not bad at all. Now, the real magic comes down to both our ultimate section and our key passive. Prodigy's tempo really feels like it was made for the Staff of Kapaleke, because it makes it so every third consecutive cast of the same basic skill increases the ranks of all purchase skills by 2 for 5 seconds, and then the third consecutive cast of the same core or potency skills reduces the active cooldowns of all skills by 10%, increased by 2% per skill rank. So our core skill is not only a core skill, it is also a basic skill. There's also an Eagle, Jaguar, Gorilla skill. And so it just kind of gets a whole bunch of benefits. This allows us to kind of spam our ultimate even without killing anything. It just lowers the cooldown of it pretty quickly. And yeah, really rather easy to do. Now, spamming our ultimate has an additional benefit in that we're getting even more damage. So casting an ultimate skill grants 15% increased damage to elites for 3 seconds. That is doubled when we're fighting against a boss. So it's 30% multiplier. We get more vigor on our bar when we have an ultimate equipped, which is very good. And then any enemies you kill while using an ultimate skill gives a stack of supremacy, which gives us up to 30% multiplier. And then when the ultimate skill ends, we gain 5 stacks, and we lose 1 every second. And so being able to just spam out your ultimate like this, being able to keep 30% multiplier going all of the time. We're getting a little bit of healing, but then most importantly, we're getting intricacy. And this is where it gets really, really silly. Because upon casting an ultimate skill, the last different potency, defensive, or focus skill you cast prior is reset and can be cast for free up to 3 times in the next 5 seconds. So if you look at our bar here, we have Soar, which is a focus skill. We have Counterattack, which is a defensive skill. We also have Armored Hide, which is a defensive skill. And realistically, we really don't even need Armored Hide. It's just kind of a nice way to get unstoppable in the build. There's some other things that we could do, but it's pretty much going between Soar and Counterattack. So if I Soar and then cast my ultimate, it comes off cooldown, and I can cast it for three times in a row before having to actually cast it off of its cooldown. And if I am casting like crazy, both of these are going to come back up. The real craziness, though, is Counterattack. So Counterattack right now has 2 charges to it. You could potentially get more charges to Counterattack on a rare ring or something like that. But if I cast 2 charges of this, now I have 6 seconds of dodging all direct attacks. I reset it. I add 3 more for free, and then 2 more. So that's 5 casts. So that's 15 seconds of just dodging everything, it seems like. And we can just keep this up infinitely. So for the most part, you'll be able to dodge all direct attacks for as long as you can keep attacking, which is pretty nice. Now note, there are a lot of boss mechanics that do not count as direct attacks. So for example, the Beast in Ice, when he's like throwing his sword into the ground and dropping little ice on you, that is not the direct attack for some reason, and it will like absolutely lay you out. So there are some things that you're going to need to dodge. You effectively can't dodge in the pit of any of the red boss attacks. They won't do any damage to you, but they will apply the debuff still. But for the most part, you can just sit there and just spam attack, which is pretty darn nice. So go through the rest of the gear here. We're using Turbulence. I don't know if we necessarily need to use this in the end game here. You notice that we have a GA armor. This is probably the only reason I have this particular piece of gear. It is like the only one that's masterworked is because it has a GA armor on it. And something like all resistance or something would be nice. We're using Unyielding hits like I talked about before. We're increasing our armor even more on basically on every piece. So this is Disobedience. This gives us even more armor than we have right now. We're using the boots here that have of assistance. So this makes it so our reinforcement cooldown is reduced by 30%. And then after casting our ultimate skill, we call our mercenary in for reinforcement. So you notice that Rahir shows up here and kind of does his shield thing here for 5 seconds. And he's supposedly making it so that 90% of all incoming damage is going to him. And yes, you can have multiple Rehears cooking at the same time if you get your cooldown down fast enough. Hey, look, Rehear is left, Rehear is back. And so Rehear is here again. Or Rehear, I guess. So yeah, it can be pretty powerful combo for sure. I don't think that anything on this boot though is particularly amazing. Armor is obviously really good. Probably would want something different here. Mobility skill cooldown is pretty decent for Sorcerer, but I don't really think that there's anything great there. My amulet, I only picked this up because it has that armor GA as well. Got really lucky and rolled maximum resource. There's probably a lot of passives that you could get on here as well to be really good. Then we're using Midnight Sun and Midday Hunt for the aforementioned reasons of getting 50% of our vigor back whenever we cast. And then we also get Midday Hunt here, which is us 50% of our maximum vigor increase, which is just a big plus. I think we talked mostly over the tree. The tree will also be published up. Important things here that I try to like work into the build is getting like accelerating Withering Fist here. Makes it so that if we want to weave in a basic, we can potentially do that to lower the enemy's damage. It is only a 6-second debuff, so you might want to weave that if you are doing that. There's not really any other things that are also super great for putting points into. You could potentially drop this out though if you really felt like dropping this point. Getting things like Vigorous here is pretty insane. I'm pretty sure like putting this on Amulet is going to be like very end game because this increases your vigor generation. So if you can make that 50% potentially almost 100%, it's going to be very game winning for us. And then just filling out all these points here. Follow through is kind of nice because it makes it so that your basic skills deal increased damage. And also on that third attack, it should be the attack that is gaining the vigor and consuming it. And it should line up, but it's not 100% sure or clear exactly how that works just yet. I have to have some testing going on. Here, I went into Vortex and put points into Measured Vortex because I want to suck enemies in and knock them down. You only really need 1 point in Soar. If you're going to be applying a lot of Vulnerable with your main skill, so it doesn't really matter. You could go and get Unstoppable here if you really wanted to. Mirage is really great. You're dodging a lot of enemies. It gives you a little bit of critical strike chance. But like I said before, you could probably drop the points out of here because your critical strike is guaranteed on your big hit. So you could potentially just drop that out. Unrestrained Power is really nice for when you're unstoppable. Diminishment here, gives you damage from vulnerable. And then going here, Endurance I kind of think is a little bit busted because this makes it so that we're gaining 10 vigor whenever we cast a defensive skill. And so, counterattack is a defensive skill. So as you can see here, we gain quite a bit of stuff just from doing that. And then when we reset the skill, that also, counts as well. So you can get quite a bit of vigor just from that particular point. And, realistically, I should probably move like 1 point out of Mirage, then over to here. I do think that Perseverance could be a good pickup. I don't really think that you need to go deeper here into Armored Hide, although Enhanced Armor Hide for the maximum resolve could be nice. I don't really think you need more points into Counterattack just because you're going to have it active all of the time. It would help you lower the cooldown more. Going there, getting the points here for Brilliance is pretty nice. You could potentially maybe drop this. Acceleration didn't really seem all that great, and all of this stuff is very mandatory. For Paragon, there's quite a bit of juicy Paragon going on in here. So Spirit, for example, gives you more critical strike damage. Going up here to Sapping, I think it's pretty mandatory for the build. Probably be the first board that you're going to go to. I think that Revenge is surprisingly good here for a weird reason. So dealing Thorns damage to an enemy increases all damage takes from you by 1% up to 15% for 10 seconds. We're not really doing any Thorns damage. We do probably need a little bit of Thorns somewhere in the build here. I don't believe I have any, so we're probably going to have to splash like maybe a point here and then a point there into Bastion to pick that up to actually get the damage. But the thing that is really nice about this particular glyph is this gives you bonus to rare nodes in range. And what's in range? Maximum resource. So increasing our resource here, I think is going to be endgame really quite good. There are some Paragon boards, by the way, that do have thorns on them. So it might be something that we go to later on. Actually, I think we're just at our max board now. And so maybe that's something that we'll deal with instead of trying to get thorns directly on the gear. Now, the other board that's pretty insane is Convergence. And I personally think that this board is completely overtuned right now, because this does bonus damage equal to 20% of your highest two bonuses to damage types combined for 30%. So if you have all damage, like non-elemental damage, this gives you a lot of damage. So you see you have damage with fire, damage with non-physical, damage with cold, poison, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, just the board itself, like if you take these two nodes here, which have non-physical damage, and all of the nodes around it, it more than qualifies for this. So you're pretty good to go. In here right now, I'm putting Talon, which is giving me more damage, increased critical strike damage, increased damage with eagle skills, which I think is pretty good. This also has all resist and armor, which is pretty insane, and all resist and life, which is just very, very, very good. Attack speed. This board is just super goated and very good to fill out almost the entire thing. Viscous shield is maybe not all that much damage, and I don't really think that this board is maybe something that's going to survive. But one of the things I was interested in is right now there appears to be a bug where increasing barrier generation does not actually change how much barrier you get right now. So 72 barrier here with no barrier generation. I'm going to take some points in here. And now we have a total of 12 barrier generation. I attack 72 barrier. So that's clearly not working as intended, and hopefully something that they clean up. Right now we're putting in here Headhunter. I'm just going to fill out the entirety of the board. I'm going to do a whole video talking about what the best board is to put Headhunter in. Something I just need to level up. A lot of my glyphs are pretty low level at this point. We're going to always be barriered, basically. Getting DR while barrier, pretty good option here. There's armor over here, and life that we could also pick up. So quite a bit of potentially good options here. And then right now I just threw points into Infighter because I wanted to hit the resist caps. And I haven't really done stuff with glyphs, but I will be updating the build with more details. And then for Mercenary, we're doing Variana. We're going over here to more attack speed, healing ourselves whenever we do damage. And then for Reinforcement, we're putting Bastion on, and this is linked whenever we become injured because we really wanted to pop off then, but we're pretty much going to be having it going all of the time. For runes right now, I did not find all of the runes at all. However, I probably would end up doing like Standing Still would be a really good one. And then, you know, I right now just put Critical Strike Chance in here. I don't really have very many other good runes, but I think the one that's really nice is doing Cast a Skill with a cooldown and Restore Primary Resource, because this gives me even more resource. So if I cast here, you can see here if I cast Soar, I'm getting 81 resource from that, which is a lot of resource, which is just, you know, pretty nice thing to have. Let's just take this out real quick. Still getting resource from that. So there's probably some other stuff going on here, but there's quite a bit of resource generation just in general, which is pretty nice to have. Hopefully this build intrigued you, interests you. There's gonna be a lot of really cool stuff. Definitely, it's probably not the best build in the game, but I had a lot of fun. Talk to you guys again later. See you soon.